to today's Omali Taught Me Sunday Study featuring Chairman Omali Yeshitela. My name is David Lance, the Director of Media Relations for Chairman Omali Yeshitela, and I will be your MC this morning. Today's study is a continuation of the document, Our Standards of Party Life, which details the responsibility of every cadre aspiring member of the party. If you're wondering what is required to be a member of the Revolutionary Vanguard Party, considering making the commitment to join the struggle, or you're already a member of the African People's Socialist Party, this study serves as a constant reminder of our duties, our daily tasks to further drive out the beast we know as imperialist white power. As stated last week, being a revolutionary, a part of a vanguard party, is no little task. It requires us to practice revolutionary principles in all parts of our lives. It requires complete subordination to the needs and aspirations of the whole nation, our yet-to-be-free African nation. It is now my honor to introduce the man living out the highest standards of party life, leader of the worldwide African Revolution, Chairman Omali Yeshitela.
Uhura, comrades. I want to welcome everybody to today's study and to reiterate some things that Comrade David just mentioned in introducing this study, that part of what we are about is rebuilding a revolutionary movement, completing the Black Revolution of the 60s. This is a task that the African People's Socialist Party set for itself, even upon its founding in 1972. In 1972, the Black Revolution of the 60s had been defeated. Revolutionary leaders had been murdered around the world. Revolutionary organizations had been destroyed, their membership dispersed. Numbers of people, how many we don't know, in this country were imprisoned. Numbers of people whose names we do not know were killed through the war efforts or the attack by the United States government against our revolutionary movement. And subsequent to that, with the defeat of the Black Revolution of the 60s, the murders of Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King and scores of Panthers and the co-founder of the African People's Socialist Party, another aspect of counterinsurgency, that is to say, a war to crush the efforts of the people that they call an insurgency to achieve our freedom, our liberation, was put in place. And that included substitute leaders, people who in most instances were opposed to the revolution. Sometimes they were not even activists and what have you, were elevated to these positions of leadership by the United States government. They were not people who ascended to leadership as a consequence of, generally speaking, as a consequence of the relationship with the African masses. They were able to ascend to leadership only because the genuine leaders of our movement had been murdered, the organizations destroyed, and their presence worked to undermine the concept of revolution as the means through which power of the oppressed should be acquired. The fact is that the struggle of our people here and oppressed peoples around the world had reached a new stage by the mid-1960s. It was a struggle that had concluded that the entities, the institutions, or institutionalized repression, oppression, known as colonialism, had to be overturned. Peoples all around the world were fighting against this. People fought against it in Vietnam. The Vietnamese people did. People fought against it in various places around the world. Of course, we know about Cuba, excuse me, and in various places on the continent of Africa. That was also true in the United States. And that is, the movement had gone through various periods. In the United States, in the early part of the 20th century, Marcus Garvey had led a remarkable movement that had within it up to 11 million members around the world. Revolutionary struggles occurred in Mexico. We were looking at people like Pancho Villa, Francisco Villa, and Emiliano Zapata, and all around the world, this struggle was happening. We had moved from this place of just trying to find a way to get along with our oppressors. That's been called things like civil rights movement, or even just a quest of some kind of neo-colonial substitute for genuine freedom. And the people were fighting for total liberation from our oppressors. I think it's important to remember that because as quietly as it's kept, despite the fact that up until the 1960s, white power represented itself in its own face. It was not just white people or white or imperialism in white face that we were fighting against. We were struggling to achieve liberation for our people, to take back the resources that belong to us, to be able to say that our children will have a future based on the fact that we have acquired the power collectively in our communities to make that future possible. When that revolution was crushed, it was this institutionalized neo-colonialism, white power in blackface, what they call indirect rule was imposed on much of the world. And for many people, this created a tremendous amount of confusion, perhaps for the majority of the people, because so much was understood by superficially as being fighting against a white man, so that when Africans and Mexicans and Cubans and other people represented the same policy and represented the same interests and was also substituting for the white man, it was confusing, and it continues to be confusing up to this day. The point I want to make is that we had a revolutionary movement that struggled to overturn all forms of oppression and exploitation, that had moved beyond simply wanting a black face, had moved beyond accepting the viability of the relationship that we have with imperialism, whether that was in the United States and the United States government, or whether that was in various other places around the world. People wanted our own power. And that happened in the United States as well, happened in the Black Liberation Movement. So this was a movement that was crushed. This was a movement that resulted in more than 300 members of the Black Panther Party being arrested, something like by 1968, 69, more than 30 members of the Black Panther Party being assassinated, hundreds, thousands of mass arrests around this country, people being imprisoned, nameless, some people whose name we will never know who were assassinated by the United States government. All of this happened, and I think it's important to say that this was a part of a revolutionary movement, one of the most exciting moments in history that we're talking about. It's the moment that most of us think of when we want to hold up evidence of the great revolutionary struggle that we're involved in. It was a moment that saw people like Patrice Lumumba and Kwame Nkrumah and members of the Black Panther Party, Fred Hampton and Che Guevara, etc. This was the moment that the United States government and all of the white imperialist powers felt it necessary to destroy in order to guarantee a continued future of imperialism and our enslavement. And so they dressed up people who looked just like the oppressed, looked like us, eat the same foods, know the same dances and songs and what have you, dressed them up and made them servants of imperialism to function as substitutes for the leaders they had murdered. They gave us things like holidays in the names of murdered leaders. Sometimes they even named streets for the persons that they had assassinated. This was a very cynical move by imperialism, and there was a whole group of Africans who were willing to play their role, who were raised up to significance and never could have come to on their own. This is what we found ourselves. So we have been fighting since the 1960s in the African People's Socialist Party to complete that revolution that the United States government crushed. To complete that revolution that even people who were not alive, but who are here today, think of when they think of the glorious period of struggle and resistance, when they think of the beret-wearing members of the Black Panther Party, or the Africans who walked throughout Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia and Florida organizing African people. They think of when they, it's the members of the JOMO, the Junta Militant Organization, the SNCC organizers and what have you. These are the people who were wiped out, who were murdered and what have you. And this was a revolution that was crushed, and we have been committed to completing that revolution. And that means that we've had to not only go up against imperialist white power, but also against those who they have put in places of position, the more than 10,000 black elected officials, for example, the numbers beyond that who occupy roles in the state apparatus, from prison wardens to police chiefs, you name it, who are not necessarily elected but have been put in place to maintain the status quo. We've been fighting against all of that. We've been fighting against the propaganda that comes from the educational system, for every TV show, every movie that we look at, every newspaper that we read continues to try and maintain the trajectory of slavery and oppression and assault on the dignity of our people. That's what we've been fighting against. And for more than 2 generations, African people have been without revolutionary examples. But that's not just true of Africans, it's the world. The world has been deprived of revolution. And if anything, what we see are caricatures of what's supposed to be revolution, caricatures that are used to undermine the concept and to undermine the reality that revolution is good, it's necessary if the people are to be free. But revolution, for it to occur, there has to be certain kinds of organizations. Revolution is not made by just any kind of organization, and that's what part of what we've been talking about and fighting for. For 46 years, the African People's Socialist Party has been involved in this struggle to complete the black revolution of the 60s. For 46 years, we've had to deal with the fact that revolution has not been on the agenda. We've had charlatans and hustlers and not just charlatans and hustlers. Sometimes we have had honest opportunists who would find some kind of substitute for us achieving power over our own lives and did it with an honest assumption that it would satisfy our requirements, our aspirations to be a free people. And notwithstanding the fact that they may have been honest, the consequences have been the same. And so people have to be free, and our people have to achieve freedom. In order to do that, we have to have a certain kind of organization, and we have to have a certain commitment by people who are committed and will commit their lives to this project of liberation and make this the most important thing in our lives. And that's what the African People's Socialist Party is. That's what we've been doing for a number of years. So this study about our standards of party life is part of the project that we have been involved in to raise up an understanding of what it means to be a revolutionary organization. We've just come out of an extraordinary 7th Congress of our party, which in and of itself is historic and one of the most significant things about rebuilding a revolutionary movement. You will not find much evidence of the congresses of the African working class or the advanced attachment of the African working class. Congresses that are designed to bring African people from throughout the world, African workers in particular, the members of the working class, and those sectors of the population who have committed class suicide and have thrown their lot in with the African working class through participation and membership in the African People's Socialist Party. So this was the 7th Congress that we've just held in October of this year, just last month, the 7th Congress, which was a magnificent Congress, and where we continue to close the gap in the understanding of not only Africans but other peoples, and trying to deal with the the ideological and theoretical shortcomings that have hampered our struggle since the defeat of the Black Revolution of the 60s. The defeat of the Black Revolution of the 60s was something that really was also not only a physical assault on human beings, not only destruction of our organization, not only dispersal of the people who were in those organizations, but it was also an attack on the ideological and theoretical development of a revolutionary project. At the very time when some of the most critical questions had been pushed to the surface by the activities, the struggles of our people, the U.S. government and other imperialist powers attacked that revolutionary project. So much of that discussion was frustrated. The African People's Socialist Party is an organization that has within it more than 46 years of the history of our revolution concentrated. We are really the only organization that's fought for the socialism, for the emancipation of Africa and African people worldwide, for bringing socialism to the fore, to solve all the problems of the revolution. These problems included, obviously, the destruction of our organization, the assassination of leaders and what have you, but the problems of the revolution also had to do with resolving serious theoretical questions. And the party, the African People's Socialist Party, is the organization that survived and has maintained an historical continuum from that period to now. And that's one of the benefits that we bring to the struggle of the African working class and oppressed peoples around the world. So we want to talk about what it means to be a member of the party, what a revolutionary party, what the Revolutionary Party of the African People's Socialist Party has to do, what the membership of our party has to do. Because one of the things that has happened over the last almost 2 generations is we have seen the people pushed out of history. We've seen the people minimized as factors, and with the advent of social media, most contact that people have, I mean, is through computers and things like that. People are isolated from each other. There's the whole idea of going among the people and engaging in political discussion and struggles and organizing is something that has fallen to the wayside. Clever hashtags and slogans have substituted for genuine revolutionary slogans and organizing of the people on the ground. And that's what has to happen if we're going to be free. And that's what the African People's Socialist Party is about and has been about for a long time. So we're on the second part of the study, Our Standards Party Life. And I want to just remind people that this is an old document. It is a document that was created something like in the early part of 1980s. It could have been, you know, from 82 to 84. This document was written, and therefore it means that some of the things that we talk about here in terms of the actual constitution and some structures of the party have changed, but the basic principles remain the same. It means also that we have learned a lot since this document was written, and there are some assumptions that we had which are outdated, but you will be able to see what we're talking about And I think that there's a tremendous amount of benefit to be gotten from this discussion. Right now, we've come out of this incredible Congress. There's a tremendous amount of work that we have to do. The imperialist social system is in a state of severe crisis, and people in the United States are experiencing crisis too. And depending on how we relate to the imperialist agenda, we will experience severe crisis. For example, there's a serious uptick in suicides and other forms of what is characterized as death of despair that's happening in the white world. And this is a part of that crisis. The world is changing under the feet of white people, and they don't quite understand what the hell is happening. And they have demagogues who are telling them that the reason they're having problems is because of what they call the immigrants, and which allows white people to conveniently forget that it is they who on somebody else's land, on foreign land, and the people who they're characterizing immigrants are the people whose land this really has always been. People, and of course, there's an instinctive understanding by so many white people that of a benefit that the whole white society has as a consequence of the oppression of Africans and other peoples around the world. And so it doesn't take too much for a demagogue to see white people in dire straits and say that it's Africans and it's the Mexicans and it's the other peoples, the others who are responsible for your circumstances. But we come to this discussion with the science of African internationalism and with organization, and we understand, we know better than this. And so we are struggling to bring revolutionary science to the people, but in order to do that, we have to have revolutionary organization, and that's what we are talking about now. We're talking about winning people away from just some isolated relationship to a computer, where you can sit in front of a screen and talk about the thousands of likes and friends and what have you that you have without knowing a single human being in person, without engaging with a single human being to talk about how do we change this life that we're living, without going into a single housing project where people live under deplorable conditions, or a single barrio, any of that, without going to a single township as we are confronted with in occupied Tanzania, South Africa, or any of the other horrid neo-colonial situations that's been imposed on African people. The fact is that the situation we find ourselves confronted with today, which are miserable for almost everybody, can only be changed by the people being brought into active political life. And when we say people, while that's generally true, the African working class, which is the primary force that will lead to overturning this kind of social system and to bringing about a different kind of social system that can elevate the toiling masses to positions of leadership in our own societies. This is the critical question we're confronted with. So we want to continue this discussion on standards of party life, and because it's not something that people will automatically come to. We have to, we are engaged in a struggle against all kinds of bad tendencies imposed on us, where Africans in particular, the African working class, the working class is taught daily a certain kind of irresponsibility. And when we say irresponsibility, what we mean, generally speaking, is a dependency on white power in some form or another to resolve all the contradictions in life, and therefore leaving us with nothing to do except to act as some kind of wards of white people, white power, devoid of any kind of responsibility for our own lives, our own future, for the future of our children, etc. And so we have to take this on, and that means raising up the African working class to its full stature. That's what we are. That's what it means to be the advanced attachment. That's what it means to be the vanguard of the African working class. And we've accepted that responsibility. So we left off here. We did the first half, and we had begun the discussion party discipline, and which is a discussion about responsibility. And we are a party of a revolutionary party based on democratic centralism. And when we talk about discipline, obviously there are organizational principles and rules, and we'll say some things about them. But we are also talking about self-discipline. We're talking about people who have come to a point to understand that we can't win unless we are disciplined, unless we can function with a single will as a people who are determined to be free. So I'm on page 16, and I'm not going to go through the entire document. There's some things in here I don't think it's necessary for us to go to. Everybody who's in the party and in our movement will have access to this document so that you can go through it. It's a poorly edited document. I want to say that right away, but you can go through it on your own, some of it. But on page 16, beginning at the top, we say party discipline is based on African internationalism, the class and national consciousness of its members, upon the conviction that without the minority accepting and carrying out the decisions of the majority, without the subordination of the lower party organizations to the higher committees, there can be no strong, solid, steel party able to lead the poor, impoverished masses. This discipline is based upon the acceptance of the party program and rules of discipline, and in the confidence of the membership in the Central Committee. So we're talking about an organization that has to be disciplined, and because the truth of the matter is that we're engaged in a struggle with the most powerful enemy on the planet Earth, that nobody in human history has had to confront an enemy of the nature of the imperialism we are confronted with, and especially U.S. imperialism, and with the power that it has. And so you can't do this with any kind of organization. There must be a disciplined cadre. There must be a group of people who have agreed to submit their will to the will of the revolutionary project to the people that will allow for the people to achieve happiness and freedom. There can be no discipline in the party if there is no conscious and voluntary submission on the basis of a thorough understanding of the general party program and decisions of the party. Only conscious discipline can be truly iron discipline. To assist in the discipline of the party, the following explicit rules of discipline were adopted by the party in 1964. But I think it's really important, the statement that conscious discipline. This is a statement about political education, about the significance of political education, about the ongoing process of political education. For a number of reasons. One, there can't be a genuine democracy, even under democratic centralism, if the organization does not understand what the party is about. It can't fight for party principles or anything like that without having political education. That has an impact on the democratic character of the African People's Socialist Party itself. So we arm the people in the members of the party. We engage in a constant struggle. This discussion we're having today is a part of that in terms of the kinds of political education that's necessary. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that political education is what makes it possible for us to understand and be able to see the future, and to understand that the future is ours, and if we would but seize it. And I've used this example enough so that people who participate in the study have heard me say it before, but it's like if you had no experience with the flu, and you got the flu, you can assume that you're going to die. I mean, it's a horrible, miserable feeling. And of course, in some places, people do die with flu. But the point I'm making is, if we have experience we know that, generally speaking, 7 days I'm going to be all right. And so what you do is that you're able to withstand the pain, the aches, the fevers and chills and everything that goes with that, because you know in 7 days it's going to be all right. And that's what political education gives us. That's what African internationalism, understanding that, helps us to understand the nature of the system, the nature of the disease. And in fact, it helps us to understand that the very rash and what appears to be irrational behavior, oppression that we see appearing at any given moment, in many instances represents the crisis of a system that is experiencing death throes. And we need to be able to understand that system. That's the stuff that makes it possible for us to go on from day to day. That's what political education is so important. Discipline is absolutely necessary, but it can only happen if it's conscious discipline. That means an informed discipline. Because if it's not an informed discipline, no matter how much talk somebody does, no matter how they can rattle off these words about the political line and what have you, you will find out that that discipline is worthless. And I have known comrades like that. I have known people who are teaching organizations, martial arts, and teaching organizations how we're going to have to engage in physical combat, what have you. Some of the leaders, and at the drop of a hat, when pressure is put on them by the state, they're the first to fold, first to spill their guts out and become informants and other things like that. So it is, you know, political education contributes to the discipline that we want. In fact, I'd rather have security handled by somebody who didn't know the difference in a pork chop and a karate chop if they understood African internationalism. And that's the thing, because that's the thing that can help us enhance our capacity for discipline, real discipline, conscious discipline, etc. So we say that only conscious discipline can be truly iron discipline. To assist in the discipline of the party, the following explicit rules of discipline were adopted by the party in 1974. And it reads, at the June 2nd, 1974 Central Committee meeting, the following rules here were drafted, rather, so that party members would have a guide to develop and strengthen our discipline. And it reads, any party member who, 1, does not consciously strive to elevate his or her political understanding has broken party discipline. And I think that's a really powerful statement. I mean, the top thing is that it calls on members of the party to elevate the political understanding. It doesn't say somebody has to learn how to be obedient, but how elevating the political understanding. We want to have an informed organization, people who understand what the hell the struggle is about. 2, any party member who does not strive to unite our party with the masses has broken party discipline. It's a statement of the significance of the people. We understand the people to be the real makers of history. 3, any party member who reveals party business without authorization has broken party discipline. 4, any party member who discusses a party member negatively to non-party members has broken party discipline. 5, any party member who exploits or oppresses African women through action or statement has broken party discipline. And I want to remind us that this is not some Me Too garbage. This is not some having discovered that African women are exploited or oppressed. This was written in 1974. This was passed in 1974. Any party member who exploits or oppresses African people through action or statement has broken party discipline. Any party member who fails to initiate constructive criticism or self-criticism has broken party discipline. Any party member who uses words or actions to divide the party has broken party discipline. 9, any party member who refuses to recognize and follow party leadership through words or action has broken party discipline. 10, any party member who discards or weakens party leadership as opposed to strengthening party leadership has broken party discipline. 11, any party member who helps to divide and circumvent international African unity through words or actions has broken party discipline. So you can see the little fellow who came to the Black is Back conference that we just conducted in Washington, D.C. That was this month, October, wasn't it? Yeah. That was in November? November. Yeah, November, yeah. So we say any party member who helps to divide and circumvent international African unity through words or actions. And this is what this person obviously was about, never make it to the party. 12, any party member who uses criticisms to divide and not unite the party has broken party discipline. And to understand what we mean here is that criticism and self-criticism should not be understood as blaming. You know, criticism is a tool to solve the problems of the revolution, to fix contradictions, etc. We criticize, we make criticisms in order to bring contradictions to the surface so that they can be dealt with. We do self-criticisms sometimes to bring contradictions to the surface that other people may not have even known, but I know. And if I could make this error, then somebody else can make this error, and then it's incumbent upon me to say, hey, this is an error I made, and this is the basis for the error that I made, etc. 13. And so it's not about, somebody would say, well, to make a criticism, that's to be opposed to criticism if you say that criticism can't be used to divide, if it has to unite the party. But that makes the assumption that the party can be united and can only be united based on revolutionary principles, based on principle, based on carrying out the project of the revolution. That's why we engage in criticism and self-criticism. 13, any party member who uses criticism or self-criticism on a personal level and not a political level has broken party discipline. And we've seen enough of that, you know, where, where criticism and self-criticism, they are used to, like on a personal level, independent, free from any concern about the work. You hear criticism that doesn't say anything about what it means for the party, for this, what it means for the revolution. It revolves around just personal stuff, and sometimes subjective, mean-spirited stuff that's directed against somebody in the party. 15, any party member who does not carry himself worthy of emulation by the masses has broken party discipline. 16, any party member who displays arrogance through actions or words has broken party discipline. 17, any party member who displays negativism and reluctance in carrying out party tasks has broken party discipline. 18, any party member who does not strive to bring more Africans into the party or party organizations has broken party discipline. 19, any party member who engages in adventurous and individualistic acts has broken party discipline. And 20, any party member who fails to carry out party policy as manifested in the party constitution, the party documents, and the Central Committee has broken party disciplines. So the discipline is a critical question, but it's not just an abstract question. And although this that I've just read, these 20 positions on the question of party discipline doesn't cover everything. It doesn't. But it helps us to give us a basic framework. And, the struggle for discipline, you're going to recognize in yourself or somebody else something that's not mentioned here. Struggle for discipline is something that all of us participate in because we want to be successful. We want the revolution to be successful, and that's the basis of doing that. So we say here, why do African internationalists attach so much importance to discipline? This is on page 17. Because without discipline, there can be no unity of will, no unity of action. Our party is the organized and most advanced section of the poor, impoverished, laboring African masses, as well as the general struggle for socialism. The party is the vanguard of the toiling masses in the international class war. In this international class war, there is the international imperialist class with its henchmen and helpers, the pacifists, reformers, leaders like the NAACP, SCLC, PUSH, etc., or we could say the Black Lives Movement, for that matter, on one side, and the toiling masses and our allies on the other. The international class war is bitter. The toiling masses and the enemy is powerful. It has all the means of deceit and suppression. Armed forces, National Guard, police, courts, movies, television, radio, press, schools, churches, etc. In order to combat and defeat this powerful enemy, the army of the poor and impoverished laboring African masses must have a highly skilled, trained general staff, which is the African People's Socialist Party, which is united in action and has one will. That's a hell of a statement. It's united in action, has one will, one will. And that's something, again, that at different times the party has been slandered for, because it says to some of the oppressors that we are like automatons, because you can get the same position from a member of the party, a member of our movement in New Jersey as you can get in some place in South Africa. And they say that means that you're all automatons. What it means is that we have one will. We are united. We have one will. We are all fighting for the same thing. Our objectives are the same. We have plenaries and congresses and things like that to remind us and unite us as one single organization with one objective, which is the total liberation, unification of Africa and African people under the leadership of the African working class. And that's our commitment. Everybody. You don't have a party that has several different missions in the single organization. And that has upset some people who have come into the party. I don't know how they got that far. They've become party members, certainly on probation, and they've been upset because it's just one party. It has one line. It has one will. So you won't find in the African People's Socialist Party different political tendencies trying to be reconciled in the single organization. African internationalism is our political line, and we have one will as a party. And that's what's necessary. So how can an army fight against the army of the enemy if every soldier in the army is allowed to question and even disobey orders of superior officers? What would happen in a war if, for example, the general staff orders an attack and one section decides to obey and go into battle? Another thinks that it's wrong to attack the enemy at this time and stays away from the battle. And a third section decides to quit the trenches and retreat to another position instead of going forward. I mean, that's a hell of an army that you're going to have there. And so the African People's Socialist Party exists to organize and guide the liberation of the masses of black people around our daily needs and for socialism. The test of a good, and the reason we say around our daily needs is because this is not some abstract struggle. People have to eat. And people need shelter, and people need things to live with. And there are some dilettantes who raise up the question of revolutionary socialism without even being concerned and considering the fact that we are a party that's also interested in the daily needs of the people. To be able to organize and lead communities, to be able to organize and lead communities, to win the masses to the policies of the party. The basic party organization must have ever-growing mass ties and connections and very good knowledge of the area of responsibility. And I think this is something that distinguishes the party from, just an organization that's working in a union factory or a plant or something. We're talking about, because we're talking about a whole colonial population, a whole colonized population. And we're saying that we have to be able to organize and lead communities. And that's what we are doing, like in St. Louis right now. That's what we've always done. That's how St. Petersburg, look at our work in Oakland, California. Look at our work in Edmonton West in South Africa. The thing is to win the masses of the African workers to the project of total liberation of Africa, and then how that represents itself in the different places where we are organizing on the ground. So we talk about having ever-growing mass ties and connections, very good knowledge of the area of responsibility. I'm just going to touch upon this just briefly because when we talk about the area, the necessary knowledge, we're talking about, and this is stuff that most of us too often pay no attention to and know very little about. I mean, how many of us, for example, when we have taken on electoral campaigns, have had to be confronted by the fact we don't know anything about elections. We don't even know the names of the people who occupy these positions in the governmental structure. This stuff has just been, non-consequential. We haven't paid any attention to this kind of stuff before, but people do. And the majority of the African working class who participate in political life do so not in the African People's Socialist Party, not in the Uhuru movement, but in the Democratic Party or one of the parties of the bourgeoisie. So it's important for us to have all kinds of information about how this process, how this state apparatus, how everything functions in these communities that we live, because they are affecting the lives of our people, and they're drawing our people into different kind of political activity and arenas, and that we are separate from through our ignorance and a certain kind of arrogance that we have too. So we say that we need to know the extent of the area of responsibility. The extent of the area of responsibility. If for the local unit, we're talking about the community, the campus, the prison, the factory, a particular city. For a local party organization, we're talking about the entire city within which the units function. We need to know that. I mean, if we're going to be leading these, we need to know this. We need to know the people within the area of responsibility. This includes the size of the population. We work in cities, we don't even know how many damn people are in the city. That's the truth. And somebody right now is Googling where they are to see how many people in the city you're located, because we don't even keep up with that kind of information. We don't even know the ratio of Africans to North Americans. We don't even know who's in the damn city. We don't even know what our potential is for organizing, because we have none of that information at our hands. And we should. What party affiliations are we looking at? And there are certain assumptions that you can come to often, sometimes you can, based on party affiliation. But we've just seen an example here in the state of Florida where party affiliation didn't mean what they thought it meant in this governor's race, right? This guy comes in with a 7%, the African with a 7 percentage point lead in the polls, and then he loses miserably in the election. Sometimes it doesn't tell you the truth. And they call that the Bradley effect, coming from Tom Bradley, who was the mayor of Los Angeles, who ran for governor of California and had leading powerfully in the polls. And then at the election time, he lost miserably because white people lie because they say what they know they should be saying, who they should be voting for if they believe in the system and what have you. And they say, yeah, he's a Democrat. and the other guys are racist, reactionary, etc. So the right thing to do, and he's black. So I vote for this guy, prove that I'm progressive, and so you ask the question, who are you going to vote for? Oh, I'm going to vote for the black guy, of course. And I told people about Gillum. I had that discussion with somebody. Was it you, Chairman Ringer? I said, no, the Bradley effect, you know, because they say what they know they should say, or they think they should say, in order to prove something. And then, of course, they did something else. But generally speaking, I mean, it's important for us to know this. I mean, that's why even when we do an electoral campaign, we look at how people voted in the last election, right? Because it tells us something about where people are politically, you know, within the scheme of things. And then we need to know stuff like, because what troubles me considerably right now is that every so-called leftist and nationalist that's supposedly involved in political life sees the whole political reality revolving around the electoral process. And this blows my mind because what is clear is that the masses of people have been moving away in most instances from the electoral process as it represents itself to them. This is one of the things that Trump was able to win. Trump, and I think it's important to remember, Trump didn't just win just with white people. He won with many white people who also voted for Obama. And, but the people are disgusted with the electoral process as it represents itself. That was the popularity of Bernie Sanders. Because both of these people come off as someone who is opposed to the system as it is. In fact, both of them had to say that they were somehow against the system, running as revolutionaries, etc., except the revolutionaries. Revolutionaries ran as Democrats. And the Democrats ran as revolutionaries who were more or less successful, you know. But we need to have an idea of what it is that we're looking at, and we need to know even what's the percentage of people who actually participate in this process. And you can't believe what they say, that the people who don't participate do so out of apathy or ignorance. That's crazy for a number of reasons. I mean, the least apathetic people in this country when it comes to voting is Africans. I mean, what other sector of the population faced bombs, torture, electric prods, you know, and all of this, jailings just to vote? Nobody. We did that. And so if we did all of that and don't vote, you say, well, your ancestors made all these sacrifices for you to vote. No, 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 no. If Africans made all these sacrifices, went through all this stuff and won't vote, it's not because of apathy. It's not because they're stupid. It's because they are not stupid and that nothing has been presented. But the point is that you have all these people relying on the electoral process. So we need to know not only how people vote, who they voted for, but what sector of the population, what percentage did not vote. That's telling us something as well, because we want to organize to overturn the whole thing, including this thing that they do with voting. So we need to know organizations, the size and makeup, the character of activities, leadership, political trends of all the organizations in the city. You know, we were just in I'm trying to remember if it was Portland, I think, where, you know, we're talking about what organizations exist in the city. And so somebody said, well, this organization was here and this organization was here. So I'm trying to get a grip on this, and because I'm trying to understand what it is we are doing. We're going into a situation and we're going to make some presentations, and yet there are some organizations we're told that's been active that we know, one, they disagree with us on 1,000 different points and what have you, and they are said to be active. So we want to know what's the likelihood we're going to run into those forces or forces influenced by them, so that we can be prepared, you know, with our presentation and stuff like that. You want to know who's in that city. You go into a situation, you want to have an idea what the political makeup is that you are encountering. And that's the kind of stuff we should be asking more and more of our organizers to be telling us, okay, who's there, what the politic is, and does it make any difference that they're there, right? So we want to know what kind of issues are there. We want to know, we have to talk about, political action, that like the basic party organs should know the various, things like the electoral districts and calendar and the character of the political parties and, all of this stuff. I mean, this is stuff that we can learn. And I'm not saying that everybody should run to the library now and just get involved in that kind of stuff, but this is information that we need to know if we're going to be operating, in a city or even locally on a campus or wherever we're going to be. So in terms of organization of the African masses, I just want to say something briefly about that. Every basic party organization should have a strategic aim and a party line for its area of responsibility according to party policy. This will be a concrete application of the strategic line of the General Party program and the policies adopted at the National Party Congress. For a local unit, this might be to unite the workers in an area by demanding more jobs, higher wages, better working conditions. The reality is, in most instances in the African community, it's going to revolve around police, education. These are two things that everywhere I've gone in the whole world, not just in this country, but every place I've gone in the world, whether it's in South Africa, whether it's in England, whether it's in Kenya, some of the critical questions revolve around the police and education. And then there are other, questions, certainly in some neo-colonial situations, such as what we're confronted with. Barack Hussein Obama presented us with certain kinds of issues that we had to, and then there are local Barack Hussein Obamas in New Jersey and in St. Petersburg, Florida, in Houston, Texas, and all around. There are local Obamas. So anyway, there's stuff here on the general membership meeting that's really important. And that's on page 20, where you run into the issue of the general membership meeting. One of the reasons that we are talking about the local work and general membership meeting is because coming out of this Congress, we've decided that what's critical is to build the party organizations on the ground where we were located. We went into the Congress where much of the work that we were involved in, recruitment, revolved around placing people in the party's infrastructure, in departments of agitation and propaganda to make that as competent, as we could. We recruited people directly into certain areas of the work, into the office of the chair to make it more competent, office of the economic, having to do with actually recruitment and membership itself, firming that up, the office of the deputy chair that's responsible for the economic work, firming up all of those components, putting those forces in place. And similarly, working within the solidarity movement to place people in those locations. For example, for years and years and years within the solidarity movement, most folk were recruited into the institutions because that was a critical aspect of the work that we're involved in. Now and that's not to say we've satisfied all the requirements that we need in these areas, but it is to say that we at a place now where when we say advanced detachment and vanguard, when we say vanguard up, we're talking now about individuals who are in the movement, in the party structure, having to be responsible for the party, taking full responsibility. Every individual, every member of the party, every member of an organization of the party now assumes responsibility for the entire program of the party. That's something about what individuals have to do. And then we said that our work is, and recruitment and organization is going to be centered in the regions, so that we have determined that the regions in Africa, in Europe, in North America, we organize that there are regional committees that have the basic responsibility. And it's important to say that, because that means that we don't just have somebody who is in an international structure that's given directions directly over everything. That means that now we have leaders who have responsibility in these different regions, committees responsible in different regions. Then the other thing that we've determined, what that means is that a particular region would have the responsibility of organizing the party in every state in that region, in every city in that region. And that means also that we've also determined that in every location, everywhere the party is located on the ground, there needs to be party local organization offices where people can locate us, can find us, where they can become recruiting centers, and they become other instruments of the party. And it takes the leadership right down to the street, right down to the community, right down to the neighborhood, right down to the township where people are living in. So it's not this thing that happens from way out there. It's taking the leadership right to the masses of the people where it has to be. And that's one of the reasons we talk about things like the general membership meeting, because now we have to have these local offices. Every NPDUM organization will have the responsibility of organizing a local office. We have a major office, for example, in St. Louis, a major office in St. Petersburg, Florida, a major office in Oakland, California, but there needs to be local, there has to be local offices there as well, where people in that community can find our party, can find our movement, can be organized right there on the ground. This is, and also where we can begin to, from there we can do the political education. We can begin to put up an ideological firewall between the African working class and those people who serve imperialism. It means that we have the ability to open up new fronts for the economic work that we do. So decolonize from African National Women's Organization can be purchased in that neighborhood where uhuru pies can be purchased in that, right there on that block, in that neighborhood, where Uzi, the clothing that's produced by the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement can be found right there in that community. So the community or office, the local office, is going to be really important, and learning how, being on top of how we organize our meetings and things like that. It gives us the same process everywhere we're located in the world. You should be able to go to a meeting in St. Louis, and the agenda will work the same way in St. Louis as it does in Everton West in South Africa. And there's a basic party organizational meeting agenda. And this is different, by the way. It's incorrect in the organizational manual. I want to tell you that now. So go to your organizational manual, and this is what you should have, what you see right now, just how a basic party organizational menu, meeting agenda looks. And this is important because it helps to prevent disorganization in our meetings. It allows, it flows in subsequent process. And there are 6 categories of the agenda that makes it difficult for something to be forgotten, because the categories in the agenda include everything that the basic party organs are involved in. It includes everything we're involved in. And that's not just your local party meeting. In fact, the central committee happens in this way. The meetings in the office of the chair happen with this general, this basic party organization's meeting agenda. So I want you to consider this. I'm not going, there are a number of reasons. I'm not going to go through this right now here. People in the party and in the party organizations have access to this document, so that you should look at it. And again, on page 20, look at the basic party organization's meeting agenda. And you'll see this is the agenda. This is correct. It's different from what's in the organizational manual. I don't know how. It got to be different, but it is different. This is the one that should be utilized. And it goes through everything that, that we should be doing in this, in the local, in the organizational meetings. And again, it's going to be really important for individual members of the, for local organizations to be in using this agenda as well. I want to just finally say something about the party fraction. And you can find that on page 23 in this document. The fraction is not to be misidentified as the faction. Factions are prohibited in the party. A fraction is different. What is a fraction anyway? There's somebody in here who understands a little bit about math, about what a fraction is. It's a part. And so on page 23, we say that in addition to the basic organization of the party, the unit and the local party organizations, another instrument in the hands of the party through which we can influence the broadest strata of the poor, oppressed, laboring masses of our people is the fraction. The fraction is an instrument in the hands of the party through which the policy of the party is brought to the organized masses and through which the party gives leadership to members of mass organizations. Fractions are built in all the mass organizations of the laboring masses, in all cultural, fraternal, civil rights, and unemployed organizations of the African working class, in all conventions and conferences of such organizations, where there are at least 3 African internationalists, a party fraction must be organized. The party fraction in the neighborhood organizations, campus, student groups, shop committees, etc., under the jurisdiction of the corresponding party organization. The fraction in a shop is under the jurisdiction of the shop unit. And not that many shop units, not that many shops anymore in this country, and in the United States anyway. The fraction in a campus student organization is under the jurisdiction of the campus unit, etc. A fraction in organization of the city are under the jurisdiction of the local party organization. Thus, the organizations continue throughout the entire party structure. In all questions in which there is a decision of the corresponding party organization, the fraction must carry out these decisions. So let me go further. The policy for mass organization is made in the party bureau, local party organization or the unit. But before the decisions are made on any basic question concerning the mass organization, the party bureau invites the representatives of the given fraction to participate in the discussion. The fraction has a consultative role in this meeting. After the discussion, the decision is made by the party bureau. The party bureau can decide that the fraction members express their opinions in on the problem through consultative voting. The decision, however, is made by the majority vote of the members of the party bureau. And what the fraction means that if we have a party organization on a campus and we participate, for example, in a student organization, or any movement that's happening on that campus, if there are 3 members of the party, then the party don't just participate willy-nilly, and members just go and participate in the organization. What is the party's position on this stuff? So we pull together a fraction. The 3 members have to function as an organization of the African People's Socialist Party, even when they're doing work in the student group, the student organization, the student movement. We see how the party lines applies to this, where it is we're trying to go with this, and that's the thing that informs us. And we meet. We have regular meetings. We meet as a party. Before any other meeting we participate in, the party meets as the fraction to see where it is that we go, to make sure that we carry with us the party's line. What kind of influence can the party get here? What can be won for the party in this? How can we carry out whatever objectives the party has for any other thing? Party may be organizing to do ALD, do any other kind of thing that we organize. How can we, from this position, implement the party's program or influence the understanding of the students in this organization? How can we take them from being simply involved as students in some student-based stuff to help them become African internationalists, or as much as possible influence the political development of that force? That's a responsibility that we have there. It's one of the reasons we say that also, like some people we've known who said that, you know, one of the first things that happens, of course, when certain people join the party is they want to quit their jobs, right? Because they say they want to give all their time to the party. Well, I want you to give all your time to the party too, right where you are. And that simply means that we have to organize where we are, on that job, on that campus, et cetera, and we win more forces like ourselves so that we can begin to function as a party unit or as a fraction, when I say or as a fraction within the organizations and campaigns, et cetera, that might be going on that campus. The point is that the fraction contributes to our ability to work as the party all the time. You don't have to quit your job. You don't have to escape from prison to do party work. You can do it right there on the joint where you are. You understand? You don't have to leave the Army. In fact, we want you to, now that you're there, dummy, we want you to organize other soldiers, other troops, et cetera, because everybody comes to the same conclusion you're coming to, but not wanting to be there in the first damn place. So you should bring them into organization. And everywhere we are, that's what should be understood. You don't have to leave somewhere to do work with the party. As the party, you can do work as the party wherever you're located. And that takes a lot of pressure off of everybody too, because people suffer mightily often being on these colonial jobs, right? And they want to do the work, right? Or we're saying do the work there, right? As to what we want to really try to help people to understand how to do that. So we say that the leading fraction of a fraction in a given organization is composed of those party members who are elected by the members of this organization to the leading committee, for example, right? So you are part of this, the Black Student Union or some other kind of organization. You have been elected as a chair or as a treasurer or some other post there. And there are others who have been elected. So we say the leading fraction of a fraction in a given organization is composed of those party members who are elected by the members of this organization to the leading committee. For example, an organization with 100 members may elect an executive committee of 12. Among those 12, there are 3 party members. These 3 party members compose the leading fraction of the organization. This is the leading fraction of the organization. These fractions are under the control of the corresponding party committee or local party bureau to which they must report regularly. At the same time, this leading fraction also has the duty of reporting to the general fraction, that is to say everybody else who participates in the fraction, because we've got 3 people who are in the leading fraction, but there are other members of the party who are in the organization as well. You with me? So we have to report on the activities to the general fraction. The candidates for election in a mass organization are selected by the general fraction, but must be approved by the corresponding party committees before they are proposed to the general membership meeting of the organization. In other words, if we have people who are in the party, and we spoke of a campus organization, or any other kind of organization, could be a mass organization, could be an organization pulled together to bring peace to this or that, right? So what it means is that we want to propose some people for leadership. And this is an organization that's just being created. So, so the general fraction, as I say, will select these people to be put forth. General fraction, right? We got an organization of 100 people, 12 of the people of the 100 exec committee or something like that. 3 of the people may be people in the party, but of the other people in the organization, there might be 12, 15 people who are also members of the party, but everybody in the party will not become a part of the leading fraction. But the general fraction then should propose who it is that we want to run for leadership. This time or the next time, the general fraction should say, okay, these are the people who we want to run. That means that the fraction will meet, have a discussion, and then those persons will be put forth by the general fraction. And of course, that has to be approved by the local party organization. This is really important because we don't want to have a situation where you get to a meeting, and we've seen this happen in our party before, and there's a discussion going on in this committee, in this mass organization, and then you have somebody from the party who says one thing, and then somebody else in the party who contradicts that thing that the person in the party has just said, and we don't have unity within the party about how we're going to participate in this organization. But fraction work gives us the ability to be united on every question, and that's really important because what helps that to be important is because people know who we are. Most instances, they know who we are. And then to see us in this meeting that disunited and what have you definitely does not confer confidence on the party to these other non-party forces. And it definitely means that we can't be effective in carrying out the task of the party. The party committee should check up on the daily work of the fraction, but this should be done in a way that it helps to develop the ability to act independently. In cases of a basic controversy between the party fraction and the party committee on a question which otherwise is decided by the fraction, a joint meeting of the party committee and representatives of the fraction should be arranged at which the question should be clarified and decision made by the party committee. And this decision has to be carried out unreservedly by the party fraction. So that's some stuff on the party fraction. I wanted to introduce that because it's important. For the parties organized all the time, not just some of the time. If we go into a particular kind of organization, mass organization, we never go as individuals. We're members of the African People's Socialist Party, but more than that, we're organized members of the African People's Socialist Party, which means that we consolidate a fraction through which the party's program, line, and influence can be exerted. We say on page 25 how the party members must be known as fighters. On page 26, in order to gain results, the organization as a whole and every individual member of the organization must be known by the masses in the neighborhood or city as fearless, unrelenting fighters in the interests of the oppressed, colonized African masses and the international laboring masses. In the daily work of the unit and local party organization, we should systematically gather all relevant information about the oppressed, colonized African community and other sections of the population in the block or the city. But the party has to be known as that section of the class that's unrelenting, that we will fight. We will, if nobody else is going to fight, the African People's Socialist Party will fight. We have to be known. And when we, as that force, a solid force, that's going to be the backbone of the resistance of the struggle. And that's, we've known, we've gained that reputation, and certainly in several cities where we have been, and people would tell stories about that today, about how the party is known as the organization of fighters, you know, and that's really important for a colonized and oppressed population. In order to gain results, the organization as a whole and every individual member of the organization must be known by the masses in the neighborhood or city as fearless, unrelenting fighters in the interests of the oppressed, colonized African masses and the international laboring class. In the daily work of the unit and local party organization, we should systematically gather all relevant information about the oppressed, colonized African community and other sections of the population in the block or the city. We should know who is who. And we should know not only those Africans who voluntarily gather around the activities of the party organizations, but those who are inclined to be sympathetic, as well as those who have been poisoned by the capitalist colonialist propaganda of the enemies of African liberation and socialist revolution, and by the ideological imperialist vermin. We should know those Africans who are members of the ideological imperialist organizations, as well as the members of groups like the NAACP, SCLC, and PUSH, and other organizations which are led and influenced by reformist collaborators and reactionary leaders. A party unit or local party organization acquainted with the individuals in its areas could formulate the correct, most compelling slogans and actions for the mobilization of the masses. Such a unit or party organization would not have any great difficulties in taking its part in the general party campaign and carrying out the party's general program and strategy. In the general party campaigns, the different party units and organizations should be able to enlist all the sympathetic elements in the territory. We're talking just recently about having to pull together people here in the city of St. Petersburg. We don't obviously need to move party forces, but there are people who are sympathetic to the party also. We should know who they are and be able to call on them at any given moment and to press them into motion. A unit should know in advance who will contribute to or participate in a particular general party campaign, and who is inclined to be against it, and should adjust its activities accordingly, not only in the general party campaign, but also in personal contacts. We have a sense of who is down with us or inclined to be, and who's going to be opposed to us. You can, in most instances, if you're active in the community, you can almost be certain about who's going to be likely to unite with it and who's going to be opposed. If the laboring and oppressed masses know through the party organization's activity how bravely and uncompromisingly the party fights for the interests of our people, and if at the same time the party organization can convince the masses of the counter-revolutionary role of other parties, such an organization can gain tremendous influence and certain success in carrying out general party campaigns, as well as other work important to the local organization. Such an organization carrying on daily mass work, street and house meetings, house-to-house canvassing, distribution of the burning spear, publications of a neighborhood paper, etc., during the general party campaigns will not only show results for the campaign, but will gain better conditions for the masses and win new recruits for the party, as well as new readers for the burning spear. The African People's Socialist Party is an organization of political organizers. We are revolutionary politicians whose politics and organizing are in opposition to the politics and organizing of the capitalist colonialist ruling class and its henchmen, lackeys, and political parrots. While the politics and organizing of the capitalist colonialist ruling class are designed to maintain and reinforce colonialism, and neo-colonialism, and wage slavery, all of which belong to the past and have been condemned by history and the awakening laboring masses of the world to a bloody death, the politics and organizing of the African People's Socialist Party are consistent with the needs and aspirations of the enslaved and exploited masses and represent the future of humanity. As revolutionary politicians, as an organization of political organizers, every member of the African People's Socialist Party thoroughly understands the party's general and ultimate aims, as well as the chief strategical aim of the period. Every member of the party is thoroughly familiar with and has complete confidence and complete understanding of the party's general program and strategy. The general and ultimate aims of the party, our general party program, are the essential elements of our party which gives us an identity of our own. These are the elements we must win the masses to and which guide our organizing efforts in every way. Therefore, to be successful in our task, it is absolutely necessary for the entire party membership in every unit, city, and party organization to have a thorough understanding of these elements. Indeed, every party member, political organizer, and revolutionary politician understands that as we do our day-to-day work, we are actively engaged in the parties and organizations of the capitalist colonialist ruling class in political struggle, the outcome of which will determine the immediate future of our people. Every party member understands that we are in a political contest with the enemies of our people, with the counter-revolutionary politicians of the capitalist colonialist ruling class, and that the outcome of our struggle will be determined by which of these forces is capable of winning and securing the loyalty of the broad masses of our people. As revolutionary politicians, party members understand the need to make the ongoing struggle to win everyone possible to the party's position and politic on every issue and question, and to neutralize all those who cannot be won. In order to win the people to issues and positions, the party understands that it is absolutely necessary for the individual party member to understand the basic fundamental elements of the party's general and ultimate aims as put forward in our general party program, as well as the issues and questions which may be involved during any particular campaign. This thorough discussion occurs within every party organization, around every element of the party, and around other issues and questions which the party may be raising, or which may be raised by the masses or the enemies of our liberation. So I wanted to go ahead and in this discussion, in this reading, I know it was rather disjointed reading, trying to take up this in two separate sections. It was not planned that way. It was planned that we would finish it last week, and thought that it would be important to include some of what was not discussed last week on today. Uhuru.
Uhuru, let's salute our leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, for that major study. We want to appreciate everyone who's tuning in via Facebook and YouTube live streams, and also appreciate all of your engagement. Please continue to invite your friends and family to the study and share widely on all your social media platforms. It is now time to open up the study for questions and answers from our live audience as well as online viewers. Do we have any questions or comments from the live audience? All right, we have a comment online from Janaba from Michigan. She says, in reference to the party rules of discipline, those disciplines eventually should become a way of life. We also have a question from Janaba. She says, we say we are socialists and African internationalists. Can you discuss why we call ourselves both socialists and internationalists and the differences within our definition, as well as the difference between white communism / socialism and what our objectives are in terms of African liberation?
I think that's a very important question. I want to thank you, Comrade Jacob Lumumba. Jacob Lumumba's father was an important leader of our party in Oakland, California. He was an extraordinary man. He helped to organize the response of the African community in Oakland to the assassination of Huey P. Newton. And of course, she is somebody who, from early childhood, well, almost from conception, was involved with the party. But the fact is that we say that we are African internationalists. And that means that the way we have come to conclusions about socialism and social system is different from most of the people who, certainly the white socialists and people who call themselves socialists in the white world and influenced by them. That is because what we have come to understand a long time ago, for a very long time, is that capitalism is not some system that has come into existence simply as a consequence of some inherent development in Europe or among white people, or some development like that. And defined as such by Marxists and by Marx, capitalism would be like an improvement, an advancement in human history, human society. And we say that's absolutely wrong. In fact, today, if you read many Marxist economists, they will talk about how capitalism has resulted in the greatest production in human history. And we say that's nonsense, that it's self-centered definition of reality, that capitalism came about as a consequence of an assault by Europe on Africa and most of the world that rescued Europe from a state of dire poverty and from feudal existence at the expense of the rest of us, and that it imposed certain structures in the world that exist up to now that continue to suck the resources out of Africa, Asia, what they call Latin America, and various other places into Europe. This is a condition for the rise of capitalism. And so, you know, our view is quite different from the Marxists. And although Marx was able to talk about this, to say, you know, that this constituted what he called a primitive accumulation of capital that made capitalism possible, and perhaps from his perspective necessary. But he was unable to say that if capitalism came about in this fashion, then the way to end capitalism and to bring about this socialism that we're talking about is to destroy this pedestal of colonialism and slavery upon which capitalism resides and that it requires for its existence. For us, it's not good enough just to say that people are opposed to capitalism. They must be opposed to parasitic capitalism. They must be opposed to the capitalism that got its genesis and maintains its existence through slavery and colonialism. And to be opposed to that means that we have to overthrow these existing relationships, and that gives rise to the leadership of the colonized and oppressed people and African people of the world, that the road to socialism is painted black. And so most of the socialists that you know, most of the people who call themselves socialists that you know, most of the people who refer to themselves as communists that you know do not come to that conclusion. And in fact, they fight as hard against the notion of African people becoming free and independent in charge of our own affairs, as do the people who admit that they are imperialists and capitalists and the rest of them. And that's because everything that Europe and white people have has come to them as a consequence of slavery and colonialism, And to say that we concede to Africans and other people the leadership of the struggle for socialism to change the world is to abdicate what they think is their, what do you call it, when, their inheritance. And what they have inherited is the consequence of slavery and colonialism. So here they are calling themselves communists and what have you, but they have 1,000 different reasons why African people are fighting for our liberation and Mexicans fighting for their liberation, and for communism and socialism somehow responsible for dividing what they call the international working class. And when the fact is that the white working class was born at the expense of the resources and life and future of Africans and Mexicans and the working people of the world. Excuse me. So, Janeba, I know it was a long-winded kind of response, but I hope it was minimally satisfactory.
Do we have any questions from the live audience? All right, Uhuru. We have a salute from Uhuru Solidarity Movement in Australia. They said, Uhuru, Comrade George Omali from USM Australia are watching. We also have some salutes from Comrades Coffee Wright in St. Louis, Lisa Davis, Vice Chair of the Black is Back Coalition in Newark, New Jersey. All right, Uhuru.
I'm really happy to acknowledge the presence of the comrades from Australia. They just recently did a day in reparations of African people. That was really successful. It was the first ever that has occurred in Australia. And we think Australia is really a critical strategical point of the revolutionary project that we're involved in. Many people, perhaps not enough, were aware, familiar with the brutal murder, mayhem, destruction of the lives of the black people in Australia that are called Aborigines, and by the colonizers and the imperialists. And it's good to see building there the African People Solidarity Committee, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. We also expect, similarly, to see the development of African People Solidarity Committee, or the Solidarity Movement in occupied Tanzania or South Africa. And this is, really part of the testimony of how we are winning. And, African internationalism, as we say, is a theory of practice. It's not, just something that people can think about and write dissertations on. It is a theory of practice. It manifests itself in the real world. And Uhuru, yeah.
Uhuru, we have some more salutes from the comrades watching online. Comrade Nana Yal Grant says, Uhuru, thank you, Chairman, for laying this out. We cannot overstate the importance of this work. Gabriel Lucifer Amadou Hoko says, Uhuru, and salute to the Chairman. Wandalin Cobb says, Uhuru, salute and honor to the Chairman. Do we have any more questions from the live audience? Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairman. Jackson from the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. Every once in a while I'll hear the question of why the party's headquarters is in St. Petersburg, Florida, and questions about where you're from and what your name means, and if you're from Africa. And I wanted to hear how you would answer those questions as to why the party is in St. Petersburg, Florida, and the significance of, why you are in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Uhuru. Well, one of the questions about where I'm from, I am from Africa, but I was kidnapped before I was born. So more than that, I cannot say, except that Africa is the homeland of African people worldwide. I was born in St. Petersburg, Florida, and my political activism began, kind of, sort of. Actually, it's an interesting question. I never, much of my political activism began when I was in the U.S. Army. I left St. Petersburg, Florida as a young person, just turned 18, and joined the Army looking to go someplace where such restrictions on black life would not occur. And you can't get too much farther south than Florida. And so I was running from that, only to discover upon leaving that, literally on the very train that I was traveling for my induction, that it was everywhere. I mean, it wasn't just something that I was confronted with in the South or in St. Petersburg, et cetera, and ended up in Germany, and ironically faced greater fury from white nationalism by white U.S. soldiers who were also in the U.S. Army, as I was, than from Germans, where Nazism had only been defeated something 14 years earlier. And politically, Nazism had been defeated only 14 years earlier. So that's where I really began to understand more about the nature of imperialism in the whole world. I ran into Africans there from the continent of Africa who participated in educating me, some directly, some indirectly, through connecting with them. And so that's how, and then I came back to St. Petersburg, Florida, and began to organize. I joined the Student Nonviolent Coordinator. Well, actually, I tried to go into the NAACP, which was a horrible experience. It's worse than going to the dentist. I tried to join the Nation of Islam because I had been influenced by Malcolm X, only to run into a situation where we frightened each other, because as a young person, they were trying to sell me on, this crazy, I mean, really, let me not say crazy, because I'm talking about religion now, and which means that you can't make one crazier than the other, one branch or et cetera. But they, I knew more about the history of Islam than they did, and that scared them. And then when they got scared of me, I got scared of them. So that didn't work. I joined the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and began organizing throughout the state of Florida. But I have been headquartered in Louisville, Kentucky, and various other states throughout this country, and then certainly in Oakland, California. And the last significant revolutionary movement in Oakland, California was led by the African People's Socialist Party. The reason I'm here at this moment, because my office is where the struggle is at any given moment. But the way things were developing at the time I came back to St. Petersburg, Florida, and brought our organizational headquarters. It was influenced by several things. One, the vast majority of Africans live in the Midwest and the southern United States and not on the West Coast. Two, it was extraordinarily complicated to get Africans, all Africans from around the United States to California as opposed to some other place. 3, we saw assume that there was an intensification of the struggle, and that St. Petersburg would be more secure because of the history. We have a long and rich history in St. Petersburg that offers us a greater level of security because we've earned tremendous respect from the masses of the people here. And so that's one of the reasons, I mean, those some of the reasons we're located here in St. Petersburg, Florida now. I have done organizational work in South Africa, in England, in Germany, France, Belgium, and the rest of it. And so there's no real significance greater than what I've just mentioned in terms of being in St. Petersburg, and there's no telling how long I'll be here because we have to be where we have to be. Uhuru. Yeah.
Uhuru, thank you for that answer, Chairman. This question is from myself, actually. I just want to know, as someone who's been involved in political life for over 4 decades, what would you say is the difference in the responsibilities that you take on as a member of the African People's Socialist Party as opposed to some other groups or political parties that we see in existence right now?
Yeah, part of what we're talking about in standards of party life, that's what we are describing. And this is something that's created difficulties for some people who think they want to be in the Revolutionary Party or the Revolutionary Movement. Well, I appreciate the fact that, for example, there was one person who had come into the party, and actually had been given tremendous responsibilities. And at some juncture, she says that I unite with the party, I just don't unite with democratic centralism. And that meant she didn't unite with the party, because democratic centralism is the main organizational principle of the party. And it's crucial because what it does is provide for the party the dictatorship of the working class inside the organization. That means that there are all kinds of individuals who will come into or try to come into the party. And some of them have history with other kinds of organizations, or if not, influence. All of us are influenced in a very serious way by the society, the capitalist society that we live in. We want to bring that in. We want to try to find a way to reconcile the interests of the African petty bourgeoisie and the African working class. We want to put that all in the party and let us all get along together. We want to, and it's democratic centralism that protects the party, the integrity of the party, the revolutionary character of the party. So some people have had problems, and I think that's the fundamental contradiction we run into. I respected that sister who said that I can't be in the party because of democratic centralism. And that was wonderful, but there are people who say they unite with democratic centralism, and then they stay in the party, and they are disruptive as hell because of the stuff they do that completely goes against the principles of democratic centralism. That's where the problem occurs. But that's one of the, I think the fundamental thing is the principle of democratic centralism and the kind of accountability and discipline that's required of the party. And another thing is that the party, anybody who's been in this party long enough knows that we require for our work real plans of action, not just stuff, not just careless stuff. And some people aren't prepared to do that. They're prepared to have discussions and to talk, you know, bad about the enemy, etc., but they're not prepared to do what has to be done to plan our work, to provide that kind of leadership to our party and to the people. I think that we try to, I think African internationalism is essentially the defining thing. I mean, it is the philosophy of the party. And you can see that this is not some abstract question. We say African internationalism is a theory of practice because you can see around you. We don't just talk about African internationalism. We're not some lame Pan-Africanists who always talking about something, but you can't even see any evidence of their existence except what they did to try to destroy the Garvey movement and create other kind of petty bourgeois, formations. And finally, I think the party, and this related to the other things I've said, we're a revolutionary organization. We are non-compromising in terms of the inability to reconcile the interests of the masses of our people and the toiling masses of the world, to reconcile those interests with the continuing existence of imperialism and colonialism, that we can't live together. There cannot be any peaceful coexistence between the oppressed and the oppressor. We are clear about that. And I think that's one of the things that also distinguishes us.
We have another question from Comrade Timba Shabanda in St. Petersburg, Florida. He wants to know if you can speak to why it is so important for Africans to join the party wherever they are located in the world.
I just want to say we've concluded a long time ago that the struggle for African liberation has outrun the limitations imposed on us by these borders that have been created by imperialism. That there is no solution within Ghana or within Haiti or within Houston or the US, that our solution is an all-African solution. And that our imperialists work in that fashion. We'd be foolish. You have the US imperialism working with French and other imperialist powers to dominate all of Africa. They have a Pan-Africanist worldview. Yet we would be involved in just looking at one particular place for our liberation. It's impossible. In the first place, it's impossible. And we should have learned that now by history. There is not going to be any separate revolutionary solution. That what happens is an all-African revolutionary solution destroys imperialism and means that it will make it impossible for imperialism to rescue itself from some struggle that might come from a South Africa or might come from some other place by being able to extort and achieve more resources and a greater capacity from the rest of us. The thing is that we have a strategic approach to the African Revolution. We have to fight it on every front, depending on what our capacity is. But we have to be organized to have an Africa-wide, all-African revolutionary project, because there is no solution otherwise. And history has taught us that. I mean, we see a situation with 54 so-called independent African countries. How many so-called independent Caribbean states? How many so-called civil rights we got in the United States? And how oppressed and exploited are African people all over the damn planet as a consequence of trying to get these little individual rights that you can get under this deadly regime of imperialism. The whole thing has to go. In order to bring the whole thing down, Africans have to be organized worldwide into a single revolutionary organization with a single revolutionary center. It is only then that we can accomplish what Marcus Garvey began in the early part of the 20th century. And the most successful of all the organizations that we've ever had since slavery was that organization, all-African organization, African fundamentalist organization that stretched from one end of the globe to the other, even into Australia and India and other places that we're talking about, Cuba. You look at the Cuban Revolution, Garvey paved the road. There were more Garvey organizations in Cuba. I think perhaps the most or second most Garvey organizations in the world, located right there in Cuba. So that's what we have to do. We have to build this kind of organization. Africans all around the world must join the party. That's your responsibility, to join or support the African People's Socialist Party. Let's win this freedom. We don't need to try to go through this for another generation or even another decade. Let's win this freedom. Let's all come together. Let's build the African People's Socialist Party, the instrument of the African working class for the defeat of imperialism and colonial white power worldwide. Uhuru.
Uhuru, thank you, Chairman. We have another question from Asma Jelani in the Northeast region. He says, Uhuru, Chairman Omali, I'm a member not only of the party, but also of imperial, particularly the Information and Education Committee. On one hand, I'm a college student based in Virginia. What advice can you offer for people like myself, the youth, in terms of embracing and engaging in revolutionary life, as well as combating liberalism internally and externally?
Well, you've made the first move already by joining the party in NPDUM. I think that's important because that requires an element of discipline. That requires a struggle against subjectivism and liberalism and things like that. That's part of the daily life of the party. That's what this discussion that you and I are having right now is a part of the struggle against liberalism that I know you have to contend with all the time. And you're in an institutionalized process where the ideology of the colonial ruling class is reproduced in institutions and distributed from institutions like the one that you are involved in. But you've come to the African People's Socialist Party. And what you have to do is throw yourself in the most serious way into the activities of the party. And we learn through our practice how to be opposed to liberalism and how to fight against the other bad tendencies that you've addressed. And then, you know, keep talking like you are now, and then we'll help you through the struggles that we are compelled to make with each other. That's what we are. We constantly engage in criticism and self-criticism so that, because nobody can be who we need to be just on our own. It's in a part of the collective that checks us, that continues to help us to understand when we are going in the wrong direction. And it's only a couple of minutes that we had for that, so I just wanted to make that statement, and I think we maybe have exhausted our time, like imperialism. Uhuru.
Uhuru, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, that brings our questions and comments segment to a close. Because of time, we want everyone to know that if your question was not answered, one of our moderators will correspond with you to make sure that the Chairman sees your questions. This study was brought to you by the Department of Agitation and Propaganda, Winning the War of Ideas. For your worldwide revolutionary news and analysis, visit theburningspear.com. For revolutionary radio, dynamic shows, and music by Africans all around the world, tune into Black Power 96.3 FM, broadcasting live from St. Petersburg, Florida, and accessible via the Black Power 96 app for Apple and Android, or online at blackpower96.org. Did you unite with what you heard today and want to learn more about how you can get involved with the African People's Socialist Party? Visit apspuhuru.org. That's apspuhuru.org for all information regarding how you can apply. Join the Freedom Mass Choir and Band. The Freedom Mass Choir and Band is an all-African community group of singers and instrumentalists that sing songs of resistance and revolution. Members are located throughout the United States and attend weekly rehearsals both in person and via live stream video. Sign up by emailing blackpowerchoir@gmail.com or call 727-537-6736. This November and December, Uhuru Foods and Pies is calling on you to come to Oakland, California or St. Petersburg, Florida to be a part of baking and selling 10,000 Uhuru Pies to support the programs of the Black Power Blueprint. Uhuru Pies is a 37-year-old loved progressive tradition in California and Florida. From November 5th through 22nd and December 20th through 24th, brigades will meet at the Aquaba Hall for overviews and summations, be out in the community selling Uhuru Pies, including the signature Uhuru sweet potato pie. They'll be baking, phone banking, and winning people to support Black self-determination and reparations to the Black community via the Black Power Blueprint. We need you to be a part of selling pies at 12 pop-ups on Thanksgiving Day, followed by a reparations for Black Power Blueprint dinner at Aquaba Hall. Sign up at uhurupies.org. December 9th through 16th, come cruise with us aboard the Marcus Garvey Legacy Cruise, a time for revolutionaries to kick back and relax. You'll be on board with Chairman Omali Yeshitela while getting to enjoy the spoils of the ship. Destinations include Grand Cayman, Mahogany Bay, Belize, and Cozumel, Mexico. Get signed up today at uhurulegacycruise.org. This cruise also serves as a fundraiser for the African Socialist International. Thank you to everyone for watching the study. We will be back next Sunday at the same time, 7 a.m. Central Time, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Until next time, uhuru.
I think it's also important to announce what time is our meeting here in St. Petersburg today? It's at 3 o'clock. That here in St. Petersburg, Florida, 1245 18th Avenue South. We're having a meeting, and I think the theme is something like after the elections, now what? And so that's going to be in St. Petersburg, 1245 18th Avenue South, 3 o'clock. There's also obviously community meetings that we have be having in St. Louis on today. That's at 4 Central Time, and that's at 4101 West Florissant in St. Louis. So asking people who within those areas to come out to those meetings. There are other meetings happening, but I wouldn't know the time or place. Uhuru, thank you so much for coming out. Uhuru.